Discover the incredible moment a billionaire transformed a single mom's life with one text. Sarah felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle in as she sank onto her well-worn couch, the same spot that had cradled her during many of those long, cluttered nights. The quiet of the Nashville neighborhood surrounded her, yet inside, chaos swirled. Emma and Noah were finally asleep, their soft breaths like a balm to her frayed nerves. Yet, as she closed her eyes for just a moment, her phone buzzed, interrupting the fragile calm. She glanced at the screen and froze. The name lit up, Jake Thornton. Childhood friend turned billionaire. A life she once knew, now in stark contrast to her own relentless grind. A part of her felt nostalgia, but stronger was the suffocating uncertainty. Could reconnecting with him bring change? Or would it only serve to highlight the differences in their lives? The bitter weight of questions unraveled her. Was accepting help a sign of weakness? She could almost hear the internal voices whispering doubts about her worthiness. Just then, a new message popped up. He saw her struggle. He wanted to mentor her, to guide her towards a life that could fulfill the dreams she once dared to harbor, dreams of inspiring children as a teacher, just like her little ones. She hesitated, finger hovering over the screen. How could she open herself to this unexpected lifeline? Her heart raced, tension throbbing in her chest as shadows of self-doubt loomed. Could she really accept assistance from someone like Jake, someone who had been immersed in a world of wealth and privilege while she wrestled with bare survival, juggling responsibilities like a circus performer? Should she reach out or push him away to guard herself from potential disappointment? The days unfolded into a blur of texts and calls, each one igniting a flicker of hope and dread. Gratitude mixed with an overwhelming sense of shame that gnawed at her conscience. Was she being smart in exploring this pathway, or foolishly reaching for something far beyond her grasp? Then, like a relentless wave crashing down, came the shocking news. Whispers of Jake's controversial business decisions and a sordid past tainted his charity. What did he truly know about the struggles of their community? Doubt surged through her like ice water, chilling her optimism. Their fateful meeting at a local cafe was fraught with tension. The lively chatter of patrons faded into a murmur against the stark silence between them. Jake's earnestness ebbed, and she found herself grappling with conflicting emotions. How do I know you're not just looking to play the white knight? Her voice trembled with anger and heartbreak. Jake's expression turned grave, revealing the depth of his struggles, his own battles against judgment and expectation that left cracks in his armor. Yet, could she trust his sincerity? Faced with such complex emotions, Sarah was crumbling under the pressure of choice. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her heart thudded wildly, urgency flooding her thoughts as she weighed the options before her. Reaching for change could lift her family from the precipice of uncertainty, but embracing help from someone with a stained history felt reckless. Anxiety tightened its grip around her throat as she wondered if stepping into the unknown would mend her struggles or plunge her further into despair. In that moment, as the shadows of doubt deepened, she found herself frozen on the edge of decision, a midnight dilemma with no clear resolution. The weight of her children's futures loomed large in her mind, leaving her to ponder whether she could truly navigate this intricate web of trust and expectation. With a deep breath, she stared at her phone, deciding the next moment could either change everything or spark an insufferable conflict within. As Sarah stared at her phone, the chaos of her thoughts morphed into a dizzying spiral of ambition and fear. Her heart raced, not just from the pressure of her decision but from the lingering glimmer of hope Jake offered. Could this truly be an opportunity to reclaim her shattered dreams? Her resolve wavered, torn between the safety of her familiar struggles and the potential of a new, bright path. Taking a deep breath, she tapped the screen, typing a tentative message. Okay, let us meet again. I need to understand this better. Every word felt heavy with consequence, each key pressed an embrace of vulnerability. Jake responded almost immediately, and that quick reaction sent a thrill through her, igniting a flicker of belief in the possibility of change. The next meeting was set for a weekend morning. As she approached the cafe, her heart thudded with anticipation and anxiety. The usual clamor of patrons almost drowned out her racing thoughts. She took a moment to calm herself, breathing deeply as she entered. Jake was already at the table, the sunlight gleaming off his sharp features, casting a warm glow that accentuated his earnest demeanor. Yet beneath that exterior lurked her doubts, and knot in her stomach that reminded her of everything at stake. "Thanks for coming," he greeted her, his tone sincere but laced with the undeniable tension of past encounters. "I know this is complicated, but I see potential in you that you may not see in yourself." His words were layered encouragement blended with an intricate understanding of her struggles, igniting both gratitude and anger within her. "Do you? Or is this all just a project to fix someone else's mess?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The words spewed forth, revealing a raw nerve she hadn't anticipated. If she was going to explore this path, she needed clarity. Jake nodded, the gravity of her question weighing on him. "I know I have a troubled past," he admitted, leaning forward, his gaze intense. "But I don't expect you to trust me without question. I want to be upfront. I can help you grow, and together, we can change things in our community." "Change?" The skepticism dripped from her words. "What do you really know about struggle, Jake? You've lived a life of privilege, money, connections. It's easy to talk about change." The flicker of frustration passed briefly across his face, but he held her gaze, his brow furrowing as he weighed his response. "I've seen both worlds. I've been judged, too, for not doing enough, for wanting to help in ways that make people uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean I can't support you in your journey or understand the deeper challenges you face." With every exchange, she felt an internal shift, a steep climb in her emotional landscape. Was reaching out, accepting guidance, inherently a betrayal of her own struggle? Or could it open doors she had long shut, an uncharted territory promising growth, a reclamation of her passion for teaching? In that moment, amidst the din of laughter and conversation, Sarah began to recognize an unsettling truth. Perhaps her battle with pride and accepting help was just as vital as the fight to provide for her children, a reflection of growth and a means to a greater end. But could she truly trust him? The weight of her children's futures rested on this precarious edge. As she listened to Jake's vision, a spark ignited within her, a flame merging resistance with curiosity. The threads of possibility began weaving as she thought of classrooms filled with eager children soaking in knowledge, each one a testament to her fight. The conversation shifted to plans, a foundation Jake had envisioned to support local children's education, how her experience could be integral to its success. As he laid out his ideas, Sarah felt the knots of fear and doubt begin to loosen, replaced by ambition that mirrored the fire that ignited in her soul during her own childhood. She could still be that teacher, maybe even more, if she let go of the burden she had carried alone for so long. Yet the question still loomed: was she ready to risk the judgment and betrayal that had shaped her life? The deeper she ventured into the conversation, the clearer it became. This could be a turning point, but it demanded courage, introspection, and the determination to redefine her identity. As she nodded toward Jake, a decision crackled in the air: she could embrace this chance, or retreat back to the shadows of her insecurities. The next moment felt monumental, as she leaned in, preparing to carve a new path toward self-discovery intertwined with purpose. A resolve solidified, but shadows still danced on her heart, reminding her that every leap forward could cost her dearly. "Okay, I'm in," she said slowly, her voice steadier than before. "But I need you to understand, this can't just be about business for you. It's personal." Jake's eyes lit up with understanding, but still, part of her held back. What lay ahead might unravel her completely, forcing her to confront not only external obstacles but the internal demons that whispered, "What if you fail again?" As the cafe's atmosphere buzzed with energy, Sarah sat, teetering on the edge of monumental change, fear hovering just behind her newfound resolve. Would she have the strength to face the challenges ahead, both from within and the judgments of those outside? The world felt at her fingertips, yet insecurities weighed heavily. With their plans shifting towards solid foundations, her heart raced once more, but this time, fear intertwined with exhilaration. What began as a subtle flicker of possibility now blazed brightly in her mind, with new questions emerging about her capacity for vulnerability and triumph. As the conversation wrapped up, Sarah's thoughts swirled, exhilarated yet overwhelmed by the daunting realities of her choice. Could she genuinely believe she was worthy of this new journey? Just as she prepared to leave the cafe, a darker thought flashed through her mind. If her past was still lurking, how long before it caught up with her? Unsure of the future's promise, she felt a shiver run through her each step forward, leading her deeper into the labyrinth of her own potential, yet the shadows of her past loomed larger than ever. The crossroads of her life lingered on the horizon, but would she recognize the right path when it called? The moment she stepped outside, Sarah inhaled deeply, bracing herself for what came next. She would have to build her capacity for trust if she were to navigate this unfolding narrative, one that could usher in devastation or unparalleled triumph. Change was a fickle ally at best, and at the forefront of her mind, a lingering question remained: could she stand tall enough to embrace it? As the cool morning air enveloped Sarah, she could feel the weight of her decision pressing against her chest. The cafe's warmth faded into memory, and with each step she took, the thrill of possibility danced alongside the specter of her past failures. How had she arrived at this juncture? Leaving behind the familiar sting of disappointment, she felt the unfamiliar touch of hope. Her mind raced with thoughts of the foundation Jake had proposed. It was more than just a chance to rebuild her professional life, it could ignite a passion for teaching she thought had flickered out. Yet, just beneath that enthusiasm lay a cascade of fears threatening to surge forth. What if she committed and fell flat on her face? The stakes felt impossibly high, not just for her, but for her children, too. She returned home, the air thick with memories that clung to the walls like phantoms of regret and longing. The sight of her children's drawings scattered across the kitchen table ignited an internal urgency. They deserved a mother who was present not just physically, but emotionally and creatively. The doubt began to morph into an understanding. She needed to embrace this risk, not just for herself, but for them. Later that evening, as she sat with a notebook open, Sarah began jotting down ideas that had sparked during her conversation with Jake. The visions she imagined grew brighter as she wrote, the laughter of students, their hands raised in eager questions, and her voice guiding them toward knowledge and self-discovery. It was exhilarating, almost intoxicating. She found herself laughing softly at the thought of flourishing classes and joyful collaboration, but with the excitement came a creeping doubt. Could she balance her responsibilities at home with the demands of this new venture? Every idea felt like a brick, building a wall between her ambition and her reality. Unsure, she paced the room, pushing her thoughts away each time they threatened to coalesce into a vicious cycle of doubts. Hours later, after her children had gone to bed, Sarah stared at the crumpled pages scattered across the floor. Each one a promise, yet each crumple felt like a concession to her fears. Would she once again allow her insecurities to paralyze her? That moment, grappling with an unfamiliar surge of determination, she took the pages and smoothed them against the table. "You will not win this time," she whispered under her breath. The catharsis felt liberating, like balm over an old wound. She realized the journey was hers, and no obstacle would take that away from her. Grabbing her phone, she drafted a message to Jake, sharing her thoughts and ideas as they emerged from the chaos within her. She asserted her desire to integrate strategies based on her personal experiences and knowledge of the local school system, infusing their project with the authenticity she craved. Hitting send felt like a release, a declaration of intent that would pull her away from the precipice of self-doubt. Jake's reply came faster than her heartbeat, filled with encouragement, appreciation, and a forward-looking vision that kindled a sense of partnership. They exchanged ideas back and forth late into the night, the discussion sparking a new flame within her. It was the fire of creation, the manifestation of potential that had lain dormant for so long. But as she wrapped up for the night, a ghost of an objection still hung in the air. Was this truly the right decision? Would she backslide into old habits, or could she maintain this focus amidst distractions that life relentlessly threw her way? The line between success and solace had always felt blurred, but for the first time in years, Sarah was straddling it with her eyes set firmly ahead. And yet, standing there gazing at the swirling marks of ink on paper, a thought struck her cold: what if Jake wasn't the partner he seemed? What if this was another illusion, the bright light of a new path that masked deeper shadows? She gritted her teeth against that disheartening thought, knowing she had to confront it eventually, but for now, she would move forward. With the determined flicker of a planet's dance aligned in her heart, she prepared for her first significant meeting at the school, convinced that even with skepticism, growth awaited her. As she shut her notebook for the last time that night and drifted off to sleep, her dreams painted stories of her growing presence, hands raised in classrooms, minds lighting up in understanding. Yet amidst those dreams, the flicker of uncertainty returned, and she could feel the universe whispering, soon, she would need to confront the idea that Jake might just be a reflection of everything she feared. Would she allow herself to be seen in the light, or would deep-rooted doubts once again pull her into the shadows? The next morning, Sarah awoke with an uneasy energy coursing through her. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, illuminating the remnants of last night's determination that still lay scattered across the table. The thought of the meeting with Jake loomed large in her mind, a volatile mixture of excitement and trepidation. As breakfast simmered on the stove, her children playfully squabbled over their cereal, and she felt a familiar ache of wanting to be fully engaged with them, yet a flourishing vision pulled her in another direction. Once she dropped her children off at the school, Sarah allowed herself a moment of stillness. Taking a breath, she stood outside, the school building a monolith against the crisp blue sky. Would today mark the beginning of her metamorphosis, or merely another instance of drifting in uncertainty? This time, she could not afford to back down. With a resolute stride, she entered the school's main office, her heart pounding in rhythm with each step. She would no longer allow the ghost of past disappointments to dictate her presence. She had fought too hard to arrive at this moment. The receptionist greeted her with a smile that felt oddly grounding, serving as a reminder that connections mattered. As she made her way to the conference room, Sarah rehearsed her talking points, reinforcing her commitment to create an engaging educational program that could touch lives, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Doubts still drifted in the corners of her mind, like shadows that refused to dissipate entirely. What if the school hadn't heard her ideas in a long time? What if they were only used to conventional approaches? But today was not about the what-ifs. She needed to present herself as someone who belonged. This was about carving out a space for her own voice amid institutional norms that suffocated innovation. Jake arrived moments later, his demeanor calm, radiating an optimism that somehow comforted her. As he stepped into the room, he flashed her a reassuring smile. They exchanged pleasantries before he jumped into the agenda, outlining their collaboration without hesitation. As he launched into discussions about potential workshops and community engagement initiatives, Sarah meticulously observed the others in the room: the principal, teachers, and board members. Some nodded along as Jake spoke, while others appeared skeptical. It was in those hesitant faces that she saw the reflection of her own fears. The moment called for her courage to surface. Backed by inward resolve, she interjected, embracing the authenticity she had envisioned just days prior. What if we incorporate art and creative expressions as tools for our students? Engaging them in ways beyond textbooks can spark their curiosity and desire to learn. We could also host workshops that invite parents to partner in this journey. The room fell silent, and Sarah felt vulnerability wash over her. Had she taken too bold a leap? But she held her ground, meeting the eyes that studied her intently. Jake's encouraging nod reignited her confidence, and a fire of passion propelled her forward as she painted a vivid picture of what their initiative could become. Slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Some faces brightened at her ideas, while others began to engage. Even the principal leaned in closer, contemplating the implications of her proposals. It seemed Sarah had sparked something. As the meeting progressed, they discussed practicalities and logistics, but a nagging thought pierced her excitement. Was she being fully honest about her capacity to balance home and this new endeavor? Beneath the glee of recognition, doubt lingered like a shadowy companion. Yet, in the heart of this discourse, as ideas stirred and possibilities unfolded, Sarah recognized an emerging theme. It was not solely about receiving applause for her educational methods, but about transforming lives, including her own. By the time they wrapped up, the air buzzed with tangible enthusiasm. Jake thanked her for her insights, and the acknowledgement felt like a lifeline. As she walked Out of the room, she felt a flicker of hope ignite deeper inside her, a hope that perhaps this was a turning point, not just professionally but personally. As she stepped into the sunlight outside, she pulled out her phone to message her children about picking them up from school. But first, she hesitated, glancing at a new notification from Jake. Curiosity piqued, she swiped the screen and read, "Let us do this not just for the kids, but for ourselves too. Ready for a new challenge?" A ripple of exhilaration coursed through her, mingling with the weight of unresolved reservations. Was she truly prepared to face this challenge head-on? Just as these thoughts began to materialize, another notification buzzed, a reminder of a loan application she had submitted days earlier for resources to support her project. What if they denied it? Or worse, what if they approved it? The delicate balance between exhilaration and dread danced wildly in her mind. Could she transform not just the lives of her students, but her own life, too, if shadows might still loom large? The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Sarah stepped away from the school, her mind grappling with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her phone, anxiously glancing at the glowing screen. Jake's message lingered, a promise of collaboration and perhaps something deeper. He saw potential in her. Could she truly see it in herself? Each step toward her car was heavy with conflicting feelings. How could she handle a significant project alongside her responsibilities at home? The doubts seeped in like uninvited guests. Memories of sleepless nights spent managing her children's needs and juggling her own aspirations layered on top of her growing excitement. Yet the figurative door inside her creaked open a little wider with each thought of the meeting. As she drove home, Sarah replayed moments from the meeting, analyzing everything meticulously. She had found her voice, had dared to speak up, but it wasn't just about being heard. It was about ownership, about embracing the fact that her ideas could catalyze genuine change. Did she have the strength to follow through when the initial spark faded? Though, arriving home, her children rushed at her as if they were stars pulling her back into their orbit. Their joy was infectious, and for a moment, the weight of her responsibilities lifted. They shared stories of their day, their laughter ringing through the living room, starkly juxtaposed with the uncertainty hovering over Sarah's head. But as their giggles faded into the background, the nagging questions returned. Was she making a mistake? What if the loan was denied? She imagined the fire of her passion extinguished by obstacles that felt insurmountable. Trying to ward off her worries, she engaged her kids in an impromptu art project. If they could create colorful masterpieces from nothing but a few discarded papers and crayons, surely she could launch her initiative with barely held resources and minimal support. The creativity with which they filled the pages reminded her of her concept art as a transformative power. For them, color brought life; for her, this was a metaphor. Could she too apply strokes of ambition in her own life's canvas? Later that evening, while settling her children into bed, she contemplated the implications of their simple work, each small creation, a testament to effort and imagination. She resolved to channel that energy into her proposal, not merely as a fleeting idea but as a clarion call for herself and those who had lost sight of creativity amid the conventional. In the stillness of the night, with the soft sound of her children's breathing nearby, moments of clarity erupted unannounced. There in the silence, she dared to whisper promises to herself, promises to pursue this ambition regardless of fear, to craft a life that integrated both motherhood and professional aspirations harmoniously. Yet, the weight of uncertainty bore down again when she realized her awakening might not just challenge her professionally, but within her family dynamics too. Would her children understand? Would they support her journey when they had only known her in nurturing roles? The stakes were higher, and the notion of vulnerability struck a chord deep within her. As Sarah finally crawled into bed, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jake: "Hope you're ready for an exciting journey. Let us set a time to discuss next steps, big things ahead." The pulse of anxiety raced anew. It was one thing to take the leap, it was another to navigate uncharted waters as both a mother and an aspiring innovator. Could she possibly conquer every facet of her life without fragmenting her very essence? Just then, her heart thumped with an unexpected clarity. She craved this challenge. The moment of reckoning had arrived, not only professionally, but personally, as she approached the edges of her own identity. As her eyelids grew heavier, a lingering thought occupied her mind. Was she ready to delve deeper into not just the project, but also herself? Fear transformed into fuel. It was time to confront the truths she had avoided for far too long. She drifted into restless sleep, knowing that come morning, she would have to step fully into her aspirations, poised on the brink of a journey that promised transformation. What awaited her next was not simply the meeting with Jake, but a confrontation with the best and the worst of who she could become. Morning light filtered through the curtains, spilling warmth into the room as Sarah awoke, heart still echoing with the pulse of her ambitions. Today marked a significant juncture. The meeting with Jake loomed ahead, but it was more than just a discussion of plans. It was a confrontation with her own self-beliefs, the shaky foundation she'd built regarding her worth beyond domesticity. As she prepared breakfast for her children, her hands moved on autopilot. The pancakes sizzled while her mind raced, going over potential scenarios for the day. Would Jake be impressed? Would she falter under his gaze, or rise to meet the high expectations she felt pressing down on her? Both exhilaration and dread fluttered in her chest. The moment her children left for school, the house felt eerily still. In that quiet, Sarah felt the weight of her decision encompass her entirely. With a deep breath, she set to work. After cleaning the kitchen, she pulled together her notes and began to organize her thoughts meticulously. Each bullet point represented her passion, her hope for art to ignite a change. She found herself immersed in a familiar yet unfamiliar rhythm, one of ambition rather than obligation. Hours later, with her presentation prepped and the clock ticking down to her meeting, she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back looked determined, yet remnants of uncertainty clouded her features. She allowed herself a moment of honesty. Could she transform into the leader she envisioned herself to be? Or would she remain the caretaker, burdened by self-doubt? On the drive to the meeting, a cacophony of thoughts swirled. She questioned every aspect of her plan, grievances creeping in like weeds in a garden. What if the funding fell through? What if the kids needed her more than she could give? Each inquiry was an arrow, aimed at her heart. Yet another message from Jake flashed across her phone, and with a quick glance, the first hint of hope flickered within her. Looking forward to our chat. Let us change the game. The words sparked a fuel within her that she couldn't ignore. She realized this was her chance to break free from the shackles of her previous identity, to redefine who she could become not just as a mother, but as an architect of her own life. The meeting space welcomed her with its modern vibe and polished surfaces. The scent of espresso wafted through the air, mingling with her trepidation. Jake greeted her warmly, his enthusiasm evident. Ready to shake things up? He asked, and for the first time, his confidence felt contagious rather than overwhelming. As they sat down and Jake opened the floor for discussion, Sarah felt a shift within. She began to articulate her vision. Words flowed with newfound clarity as she shared her ideas about art as a medium for healing and empowerment. With every point made, she became more anchored in her purpose. Jake nodded, clearly impressed, but soon, as ideas exchanged, an unforeseen conflict arose. Jake's vision clashed with hers in a significant way. His focus was on profitable outcomes, while her passion centered around genuine transformations in the community. She felt an unwelcome pressure build inside her. A misalignment threatened to unravel the momentum she'd just cultivated. No, wait, she hesitated, grappling with her instinct to please and her desire for authenticity. This was the moment, the moral dilemma she had feared. She had to confront not just Jake, but herself. What if we redefine success together? She proposed, the words surprising even herself. The risk of rejection felt monumental, yet the fire of necessity propelled her to stand firm in her beliefs. The exchange shifted, and as she defended her stance, a visceral determination surged through her. This was more than just a collaboration. It was her declaration of value. The meeting ended, but the echoes of that confrontation curled around her mind. Sarah stepped outside, a maelstrom of exhilaration and anxiety swirling within her. She had faced not only Jake but also the shadows of self-doubt that had plagued her for years. The path was uncertain, but she felt a newfound strength coursing through her veins. As she drove home, a fresh wave of uncertainty washed over her. Had she risked too much? Would she face backlash for challenging the status quo? But deep down, she knew that the stakes had risen, and she was ready to face them head-on, a pioneer forging her identity in the face of adversity. The journey was fraught with doubt, yet Sarah could no longer shy away from what this endeavor meant to her. The decision she made today would ripple far beyond the confines of a simple project. It would ripple into her very essence. What awaited her next was not just the awaited approval but a battle against her own inner critic and the necessity to pursue her truth unwaveringly. Would she emerge victorious in her self-discovery, or would she retreat back to the familiar shadows she once inhabited? The tension lingered as Sarah walked through her front door, the weight of the day hanging heavy on her shoulders. The sounds of her children laughing in the living room were a stark contrast to her internal storm. They didn't know what she had just faced, how she had bared her soul in the meeting, and now the uncertainty gnawed at her like a relentless itch. Settling into the couch, she pulled out the notes from the meeting, each scribbled line pulsing with significance. Jake's reassurances mingled with her own convictions, creating a chaotic harmony. The argument for redefined success echoed in her mind. She knew she had taken a risk, but was it enough? As the evening wore on, Sarah monitored her children's playful banter, their innocence a reminder of why she had stepped into this new arena. They needed her, yet she yearned to instill in them a lesson of passion and courage, attributes she was only now confronting in herself. Every smile they offered felt both precious and heavy, entangled with her surging desire to forge ahead and the fear of losing herself in the pursuit. After dinner, with the kids tucked safely into bed, Sarah returned to her notes. The lingering buzz from the meeting was fading, replaced by doubt's tight grip. What if Jake dismissed the idea? What if the community's needs didn't align with profit margins? A sharp knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. Hesitant, she opened it to find a package delivered by a courier. Confused, she accepted it and closed the door behind her. Inside, nestled among packing peanuts, was a sleek tablet with the company logo emblazoned across its surface. Confusion morphed into curiosity as she powered the device and noticed a preloaded message from Jake. "Hey Sarah, thought this might come in handy for our project. Can't wait to see how you'll transform your ideas into reality. Let's chat again tomorrow." Her heart raced. This was Jake's way of showing commitment, of respecting her vision. It was a gesture of investment not just in the project but in her potential. Could it be? She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, the air charged with a new possibility. The tablet wasn't just a tool, it symbolized endorsement and recognition. Not waiting long, she quickly opened a design app, letting passionate thoughts flow into a working outline. Ideas for community engagement, art collaborations, and service events filled the screen. With each tap, fear dissipated like smoke blown away by a breeze. But what now? How did she navigate the line between her ideals and the expectations imposed by the business world? As she scrolled through the interface, it dawned on her, she had not just to create a project for her community, but also reimagine how it could thrive without sacrificing her values. Defining success is a journey, she whispered to herself, the phrase beginning to take root. Suddenly, her phone vibrated on the table. An incoming message from Jake startled her. "What do you think about pitching this as a community art initiative instead of a corporate project? I see potential in shifting our narrative." His words ignited a swirling cocktail of excitement and anxiety within her. This was the opportunity she hadn't anticipated, the chance to align her ambitions with a broader purpose. But with it came the responsibility to meet that shift head-on. Just as she began to respond, a knock came at the window, causing her heart to skip. She turned to see her neighbor, an older woman, peering in. Stunned, Sarah stepped outside. "Could I borrow your lawnmower?" The neighbor called, her tone cheerful despite the late hour. But Sarah saw it differently. The request was an interruption, a reminder of her ordinary life. "Of course, one moment." As she retrieved the mower, doubt crept back in. What kind of leader could she be when ordinary life beckoned her back like a serene, but limiting embrace? Little did she know, the path to redefining success required not just the acceptance of her calling in the world, but also a willingness to challenge every element within her daily existence. Returning to her tablet, she felt a flicker of resolve. The stakes had risen again, and she understood that her transformation would demand more than words. It would require action rooted in conviction. Tomorrow's conversation could forge new ground if she was prepared. Yet that nagging question remained: were her ideas powerful enough to initiate real change, or would they remain obscured in a quest driven by profit? As sleep finally began to settle in, she realized she stood at a precipice. The moment of clarity was dawning, inviting her to leap into the unknown. But for every step toward discovery, could she relinquish the comfort of familiarity? Tomorrow would reveal if she could seize the narrative. Whether she would emerge fortified in her identity or constrained by lingering fears was a burning question hanging over her next move. As dawn broke, the sun cast warm hues through the curtains, gently nudging Sarah from her sleep. She opened her eyes and, for a fleeting moment, felt the familiar embrace of her morning routine, a comforting blanket after the tumult of the previous day. But today felt different. Deep perseverance coiled within her, an impassioned readiness like electricity racing through her veins. She had a mission now, and her thoughts began to coalesce around it. After quickly tending to breakfast, she caught sight of her children, their laughter breaking through her morning daze. The simple joy in their voices was almost overwhelming, a reminder of the grounding she derived from motherhood. Yet, dimly lurking beneath that joy was a persistent reminder of her frustrations, the time she had felt tied to a singular path instead of blazing her own trail. Once the chaos of breakfast subsided and the children were on their way to school, Sarah cleared the remnants of their meal. She intentionally took a moment to breathe, an exercise she now deemed necessary. She visualized Jake's text about shifting the project's narrative and pondered what this new approach would look like. Balancing her laptop on the kitchen table next to the tablet, she began drafting notes, her ideas methodically cascading onto the page. The concept of a community art initiative unfolded naturally in her mind. It was as if a door she hadn't known was closed had suddenly swung wide open. Each concept she jotted down: the need for public art installations, workshops, collaborations with local artists held significant weight. It wasn't just a project, it represented an ethos, a beacon for her collective ambitions. Could this vision resonate beyond her own aspirations? With excitement bubbling, she began planning how to effectively communicate this vision to Jake. But just then, a creeping sense of inadequacy clawed at her insides. What if she misstepped? What if her ideas felt too lofty or unreachable? Sarah shook her head, her hand hovering over the keyboard, determined to dismiss the insecurities that had plagued her for too long. She had faced fear head-on in that last meeting. Now it was time she adopted that bravery in her communication. Along with her newfound urgency, she forced herself to confront the uncomfortable reality of her daily life. Did moving forward mean dismissing the rhythm of her ordinary existence? It was time to analyze the tension between her responsibilities at home and her ambition. After a deep breath, she replied to Jake's earlier message, threading her thoughts together with meticulous care. She shared her vision, her plans looking beyond traditional corporate success to embrace art and community as the guiding force. She envisioned an initiative that came alive through collaboration, innovation, and artistic expression, emphasizing active participation rather than passive observation. Before she hit send, a familiar gnawing feeling surfaced. What if Jake questioned her authority? He was experienced and successful, she was still carving her niche. But then she sensed the resolve that had sparked to life the day before. She realized that embracing this uncertainty was integral to her journey. It was time to wrestle her internal adversary, the self-doubt born from comparisons to those around her. Confident now, she pressed send, watching as her message vaporized into the ether. But with the action came an anxious flutter in her chest. Would she be met with enthusiasm, or would questions about her qualifications burrow into her psyche once more? Just as she settled into her own thoughts, another notification rang from her tablet. Jake had replied swiftly, igniting a surge of hope. "Sarah, let us schedule a time to discuss this in detail. I love the direction you're heading. This could be the beginning of something great." A wave of relief crashed over her, mingling with excitement. This was the validation she had longed for, and it buoyed her spirits. Could she truly transform this lingering concept into something substantial? Yet, with anticipation came the reality of the upcoming conversation. As her heart raced, a new layer of tension unfolded. how to articulate her position as a leader while still embracing the raw authenticity of her vision and values. In the following hours, as she prepared mentally for their conversation, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the brink of a life-altering moment. Had she finally begun to learn that her potential exceeded the limitations she had imposed upon herself? As she mulled it over, she felt the room grow heavy with her thoughts, and with that weight came a profound question: would she remain an artist in her own life or merely an observer of others' masterpieces? Tomorrow would not just be a meeting, it could mark a turning point, a chance for Sarah to step fully into her narrative. Would she embrace the role of architect in her own life, or would fear anchor her back to the familiar? The next morning was tinted with a crisp clarity that invigorated Sarah as she prepared for her meeting with Jake. The air felt charged, and each task she performed, pouring coffee, feeding the dog, picking up stray toys, was imbued with a sense of purpose. As she steeled herself for the conversation ahead, adrenaline coursed through her, drowning the remnants of trepidation that had lingered at the edges of her resolve. After the children left for school, she returned to her makeshift workspace at the kitchen table, her laptop open to a document cluttered with ideas and strategies. She had decided to organize her thoughts, prioritizing clarity over clutter. Each bullet point became a touchstone, grounding her in her vision. The outline took shape. What she envisioned could become a transformative presence in her community. Her gut twisted slightly with self-doubt. Was she truly fit to drive this initiative? But each time the inner critic reared its head, Sarah countered it with the excitement that had propelled her into this endeavor. She was not just sharing a vision, she was paving a path where she would actively participate, not merely observe. With every keystroke, she shifted from self-critic to creator, drawing on her experience as a mother, an artist, and now she hoped a leader. A ping from her tablet jolted her from her thoughts. Jake had stirred her enthusiasm, but how deeply he connected with her concept could now define her path. His invitation to meet felt like an opportunity to solidify her stance, yet the weight of potential rejection felt heavy on her shoulders. How would it feel to be dismissed, to have her ideas brushed aside? With resolve, she recalled the exhilaration of asserting herself in front of colleagues. That moment of vulnerability turned into strength was tethered to the silent declaration she had made to herself: no longer would she minimize her voice. She was ready to be heard. As the clock inched closer to the appointed time, Sarah reviewed her notes for structure, ready to articulate each idea with conviction. Just as she began rehearsing her talking points, the doorbell rang, disrupting her concentration. It was a neighbor, their toddler in tow, looking for a favor. Despite her urgency, Sarah felt a flicker of empathy as she dismissed her flight instincts. She let them in, reluctantly pausing the rhythm she had created. The visit was brief, but it reminded her of the balance she sought between her ambitions and the other facets of her life. As the door closed behind them, a reflection of her own resolve almost felt like a ghost of doubt. Would embracing her ambitions mean neglecting her duties as a mother, a friend, a neighbor? This question loomed in her mind, but she refused to let it cloud her focus. The time arrived for her meeting, and she settled in front of her laptop, taking a moment to breathe deeply. Jake's familiar face appeared on the screen, and the warmth of his smile provided comfort, easing the tightness in her chest. They exchanged pleasantries, but Sarah could feel the shift as he leaned in, intrigued. "Sarah, I've been looking forward to discussing your ideas," Jake began, his tone inviting yet charged with professional scrutiny. This was it. Sarah could feel the edges of adrenaline sharpening her awareness. She thought about all her efforts leading up to this moment, as everything hinged on her ability to leap through the crackling barrier of self-doubt she had erected. "Thank you for being interested," she replied, her voice steady. "I believe we have an opportunity to do something extraordinary." Just as she initiated her pitch, articulating her vision with precision, a glimmer of uncertainty flickered in Jake's eyes. He paused, and for a moment, it felt as if the air had thickened, constricting around them. "Have you considered how we will justify this to stakeholders? There may be some pushback on the unconventional aspects," he interjected, raising the specter of doubt. Her heart hammered, but she held his gaze, fighting the impulse to shrink back. "Yes, I've thought about that. But isn't that all the more reason to push for this change? We can't continue to function by merely maintaining the status quo. The silence stretched between them, and Sarah felt the weight of his expectation. Would her courage resonate with him, or would it crumble under the weight of skepticism? In that pivotal moment, as Jake leaned back in his chair, contemplating her response, Sarah realized she was no longer merely a dreamer. She was an architect, ready to mold her own narrative into something tangible. Would she seize this moment of truth and navigate the unknown, or would faltering at this juncture tether her ambitions? As the conversation continued, Sarah could sense an awakening within her, but the outcome remained uncertain. She was aware that today could lead her to transformative growth or cast her back into the shadows of self-doubt. The tension hung palpably in the air. Who would come out on top, her aspirations or her fears? The meeting unfolded with a palpable intensity, each word exchanged like delicate brush strokes on a canvas poised for creation. Sarah felt acutely aware of the potential for both defeat and triumph, yet the tide of her determination surged ever stronger. Let us redefine the success metrics together. The community-building aspect can generate a long-term relationship with the stakeholders, she asserted, her voice clear and unwavering. Jake's brows furrowed slightly, revealing the seriousness of his contemplation. Her heart raced not with fear, but with purpose. Gradually, the atmosphere softened, and with every response, Sarah felt the chains of self-doubt that had bound her for so long begin to crumble. The dialogue shifted, transforming from a rigid exchange of logistics into a dynamic partnership buoyed by two connected visions. Jake began nodding, not just as a prelude to agreement, but with the dawning realization that Sarah's perspective held inherent value. "I see where you're going," he finally said, his voice tinged with excitement. "If we approach this project from an artistic community perspective first, it may inspire genuine interest from both the public and potential investors." The light in his eyes signified recognition, validation of her ideas as they began sketching out the framework together. With each passing moment, Sarah built momentum. She painted vivid scenarios, detailing how art installations could spark conversations and create meaningful connections. The world outside her window faded, replaced by the cyclone of ideas surfacing from her heart. This was no longer just about an initiative, it was about cultivating a thriving environment for future generations, the same environment she had always dreamed of fostering as an educator. Imagine classrooms overflowing with creativity, inviting students and parents to participate actively. "Our initiative could catalyze a movement," Sarah continued, her voice rising with passion. Yet underlining this enthusiastic narrative lingered a reminder: she had to maintain clarity about her goals to keep herself grounded. Jake's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue, and with every collaborative idea that emerged, Sarah felt a rising tide of self-assuredness swelling within her. She was no longer merely a single mom afraid to take the leap, she was a visionary ready to reclaim her narrative. The profound connection with her aspirations jolted through her veins like electricity. In that moment, an epiphany broke through the haze of uncertainty that had plagued her for years. This partnership with Jake, with her community, with herself was not about asking others for permission to dream, it was about embracing her vulnerabilities and sculpting her own path to success. Self-acceptance blossomed, transforming her fears into fuel. As the meeting drew to a close, Jake leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile breaking across his face. "This could truly be the beginning of something great, Sarah. Your vision is not just a dream, it's actionable, and I want to champion it." His validation struck a chord deep within her, solidifying her role not merely as an aspiring creator, but as an authority in her life's narrative. This was the leap she needed to take, and she had landed on her feet. "Thank you for believing in this vision, Jake," she replied earnestly, emotions bubbling just below the surface. "Together, we can make a real impact." Little did she know, this statement would resonate far beyond that moment. It was her acknowledgement of worthiness, standing strong against the shadows of her past. The door swung open as she stepped into her home later, her heart racing with adrenaline. The familiar sounds of her children playing echoed off the walls, a gentle reminder of her grounding presence. Their laughter infused the air with warmth, and as she embraced them tightly, she couldn't help but feel complete. She felt a surge of fulfillment wash over her, the vision for her life beginning to crystallize. In reclaiming her dreams, she opened her heart not only to the world, outside but also to her role as a mother, a woman who inspires and leads by example. Achievements and adversity interwoven, she finally understood that every hurdle faced in her past had shaped her into the resolute person she had become. As the sun set, casting a golden hue across their living room, Sarah pulled out her notebook, pen in hand. She began drafting plans for the community initiative, notes flowing with newfound energy, every letter a step towards fulfillment and autonomy. She penned accolades to her children in each section, reminders of the roots of her passion, affirming that balance was indeed possible. The doubts that once lingered faded into the background. She had been transformed, from the woman who strained beneath the weight of guilt and insecurity, to a confident entrepreneur ready to champion change. This was her transformation, her moment of victory, a personal and professional metamorphosis culminating in self-recognition and empowerment. With resolve, she reminded herself, embracing help and collaboration was not a weakness, it was a bridge toward shared success. She had taken the first steps toward transformation, and in that metamorphosis, the spark of her original dream flickered back to life stronger than ever. As a newfound leader not only for herself but for the community she would uplift, Sarah was now ready to weave together her passion with purpose. Tomorrow was not just another day, it was the beginning of a legacy. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these powerful narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this inspiring ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.